Okay, good evening, everyone. We are excited about the TAP series section 8 today. Welcome to Cosentino City, Singapore. Thank you for joining us tonight for a special topic today about human nature by architect Shing from L Architect. So basically it's an inspiration talk on combining emotions and architectures, and this is how we are wired and connected together to each other. So the way we feel and think and act are the basis of human nature. So now let me pass the mic to Yann. He will bring us through more about human nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. So for our monthly talk on architecture and beyond. It's always a pleasure to be here at Cosentino and to see new faces coming for all of these talks that we are organizing. So for the ones who are new today here with us in the showroom of Cosentino, or for the ones who are online in the live stream, just a reminder of what is the TAP series and what is the subject of this year. Please, yes, you can come. So the theme of the TAP series this year is about the commitment to the planet, the commitment to the people, and to welcome architects every month to share their life journey in their own practice of architecture, what they are committed to in their daily activities, and what had led them to be where they are today. So all along these talks, we have large firm, medium-sized firm, smaller firm, and today we have someone a bit special. I'm very honored to welcome Shing on stage from L Architect. So I got to know her from friends and then from fame, So I've been discovering her project from all of the different awards that she have obtained with her fantastic work. And as we were preparing for the talk today, I got to learn more and more about her own practice, and especially about human nature and how we perceive spaces, and how Shing is committed to create and to craft strong, memorable experiences. So welcome on stage, Shing. Let's give a round of applause.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third series of TAP, organized by Yann from WYTO and Cosentino. I'm very honored to be part of this series, and thank you for having me this evening. I'm seeing lots of familiar faces tonight, but amongst us, I believe, are people who are also new to us. And so I would like to do a short intro about L Architects to give some context of the kind of works we do, and also to share a bit about our inception story. And then I'll move into the main topic for tonight, which is touching on human nature in relation to architecture and spaces, and of course how emotions in architecture are interconnected. And we'll share how we imbue spaces with deeper sensorial resonance. Some of you here are already aware that I'm also a council member in Singapore Institute of Architects. And this year, I was given the task to revise the genealogy map done by Prof. Fong Zhong Chai a decade ago as part of this year's 60th celebration. So let's have a look where I was working at before L Architects was incorporated. So this is the start of the map. These are some of the seed firms that started in Singapore. Of course, my firm is all the way down. The one in purple are actually seed firms. Okay, and so sometime in 5th April 2016, L Architects was incorporated in Singapore. But before that, I was working in MKPR Architects for a good 5 years, and that was also where I got my licensure. And then I took the courage to start my own practice because I felt like I would be able to have more creative freedom. So this is our little office somewhere in the west side, but we have kind of like moved out. But this was the space where we started. Some of you would have come to this space before. It's small. It's only like 18 square meters. And during this time, actually in April 2016, we were doing an A&A bungalow house called the Living Great House, and also an adaptive reuse of an abandoned structure in Malaysia, where we converted it into an office space for a Singaporean client. We have been a two-person firm for a good 6 years. And then we decided that we need more help in the office. And then we became a 3-person firm in January 2022. Still in the same space, but was getting a little cramped. And throughout the years, we have had many freelancers working alongside with us. I wanted to keep it that way because I wanted to be a bit more nimble in the setup. I hope that my very modest setup encourages fellow aspiring young architects that despite the size of our practice, we were still able to do meaningful works. In fact, before that, House of Trees and a brick and mortar shop was actually done by a 2-person team project. Yeah. And then earlier this year, I decided to lower my carbon footprint, because actually I kind of stay in the central, but that office is in the west, so I was traveling a lot. I decided to move closer to home. And then we found this space, but it was kind of big. It was like 90 square meters for 3 to 4 packs, I think. I wasn't quite confident to take up such a big space. And then so we partitioned it and we co-tenanted it with a florist that does events. We use the plywood as a partition. And then this is like the layout. It's quite long, so it's like a 3 by 15. So that's how we get the 45 square meters. I won't touch so much about the office design, but I've catered a really long pantry that's as long as the work table, and sometimes I do some small meals in office just to de-stress. Yeah, and it has an amazing view, though it's situated in an industrial area. Yeah, you can see the view out. It's really nice. We're looking at the Lander House enclave, and then we get lots of mature trees. We're actually only on the second floor. Yeah. Okay. So let's go into the main topic tonight, which is called human nature. Let's look at the definition of human nature. I think this is the Oxford definition of human nature. The general physiological characteristics, feelings, and behavioral traits of humankind regarded as shared by all humans. It's almost like your instinct where you have it within you. Let's see how we relate it to other aspects. This is actually a rare orchid called Dracula simia. The arrangement of the column, petals, and lips actually strongly resembles a monkey's face. Yeah, so like the human is wired such that it draws associations to some of the things that you know. But of course, it's still an orchid, but the face is so strong of a monkey that we kind of see them within each other. The next picture is actually a cross-section of a tomato. I see a cross because of my personal faith, maybe not for others. They just see a flesh of a tomato, maybe, but I see a cross. This comes from my own personal experience and my own personal faith. So I'm only like scratching on the surface when I speak about this topic because I feel like it's deeper than that. But I wanted to give you a good analogy of something very simple where we start to see associations here and there, even in everyday things. The next picture is my friend's hand. He was visiting the Noyes Museum by David Chipperfield. And I think if I were there, I would have actually done the same thing. I would definitely have seen that fluted column and wanted to get close and then kind of like fit my palm onto the column. I think I really would have done that as well. I think there's something very therapeutic about connecting with spaces in that way. I think architecture has the power to trigger emotions. Just look at how a memorial gallery can trigger emotions like pride, sadness, gratitude. Similarly, other building types can yield surprise, or even here, as you can see, mellow one's mood to be in a contemplative state. It's all becomes a matter of how a particular space or place is designed to trigger for an emotional response in its occupants. The next project I will share, this part of the talk, I'll be sharing 5 projects. So the first project I'll be sharing is, not yet. Sharing a quote that I really like, and I actually read it over and over again sometimes. It's by Peter Zumthor. In a fragment of a second, you can understand things you know, things you don't know, things you do not know that you do not know, conscious, unconscious, things which in a fragment of a second you can react to. We can all imagine why this capacity was given to us as human beings. I guess to survive. Architecture to me has the same kind of capacity. It takes longer to capture, but the essence to me is the same. I call this atmosphere. When you experience a building and it gets to you, it sticks in your memory and your feelings. I guess that is what I'm trying to do. I think it's a very well-written way to describe emotional experience in architecture. So this project that we did sometime in 2020, it's called the House Apartment. The client came to us wanting to do a renovation to an existing 1,100 square feet interior. It's at UE Square Residence, located at downtown Singapore. When we made a site visit to the apartment, okay, this is the location, and this is actually the block. This is where UE Square is. Actually, from the unit, I can see Starbucks from here as well. I guess, yeah. So this is what the interior looks like. It's very uninspiring. It almost felt cold. I think ground floor units are typically deemed to be at the opposite end of desirability scale. This is especially true for high-rise residential projects due to the lack of elevated views. So hinging on this fact, I deliberately wanted to change this negative association with ground floor units. We discovered two things on site. One was a beautiful common area landscape filled with plants, trees, and water feature. And the second thing we discovered was a tall and lofty ceiling because it was a ground floor unit. Yeah. And so I kind of asked myself, why is it that a ground floor unit is not so desirable? And it's only like the penthouses were then equivalent to let's say, a landed house. But the context can be same. Both get a garden view. In fact, maybe the apartment one is better because you don't have to maintain it. And so I decided that I actually asked myself this question: can an apartment be a house? Yep. So once we removed the ceiling, this is what we see. The space was really tall. It was about 5 meters. So the client did ask if we would consider building a loft. But to be honest, I didn't think it was the right strategy to do. Although I think that for many designers, when they see a tall space, immediately what comes to them is, okay, let's do a loft. But at our office, we generally didn't do that. We kind of think through, actually, like, why do we need to do a loft? I mean, it's 1,100 square feet, and it's only for one person. There's 2 bedrooms, there's 2 bathrooms, and it's just more than enough space. We felt that wasn't a meaningful approach to create more floor area. So how about we better use the space to create something unique for the owner? So this is how we did the space planning. We kind of merged the outdoors inside as well because we think it would frame the view of the external quite nicely. And then, of course, we created these pitch ceiling to simulate the feeling of you staying in a landed house. This is a worm's eye view. So how we designed this was we created many pitch structures within the setup of this home because we wanted to simulate the feeling of owners moving from one little house to another little house. And then there would be thresholds of pebbles to move into these spaces. So this is how we sculpt the space. This is the eventual look of the interior. It's really warm and cozy and it's very calming. In fact, I think after we completed and she moved in and she invited friends in, I think the thing about people going to apartments is that they don't expect to see an outcome like that when you open the door. Yeah, so her friends kind of like got a shock. Like, how come your house feels like a landed house? Yeah, so we found that to be quite meaningful. There's lots of use of natural materials like plywood. And you can see that the material palette is kept quite limited. And then we kind of removed some of the plaster of these existing walls. And then we turned them into markers for some tactile experiences for the user. Yeah. The next project I'm sharing is House of Trees. So back in December 2017, we were commissioned the House of Trees project. The plot is located in the neighborhood of Kovan, which is in the northwest eastern part of Singapore. It was gifted by their parents to both sons who are my client. They decided to demolish their childhood home to rebuild it into 2 semi-detached houses living as neighbors. So this is the context of the place. It's actually facing a Category 2 road. That red roof there is actually the site. And this is the extended context of where we're located at. Just 2 houses down is actually a massive junction. 6-lane traffic, 3 on both sides. This is the situation outside. I cannot imagine staying in a context like that, to be honest. When I saw the site, I was quite overwhelmed. This was what the old house looked like, because they stayed here as kids and then they moved out and decided to rebuild. So when I went to site and then when I came home, this is the context of my parents' house. This is where I stay. It's like this. I grew up like I stayed in this house since I was like 5 years old, and to me, this is coming home. Yeah, to somewhere that is really quiet and really peaceful. I cannot imagine staying in a 6-lane traffic carriage condition, to be honest. Yeah, and so I again pose myself a question of whether we can create a great indoor without having a great outdoor. So when we first made the site visit, I actually thought it was challenging to bring that spirit of respite, livability, and tranquility into the house. We knew we had to come up with a design strategy that could better respond to the undesirable surroundings rather than to create a hermetic shell. So we asked ourselves, can we create a great indoor space without having a great outdoor? Living in the tropics equates to having abundant rain and sunlight. And so we all know trees and plants, they thrive really well on these elements. Naturally, there are also excellent shields for both the eastern and western sun, which the house was actually experiencing, while providing pleasant views such as nature was actually selected as a building material to form a very porous living facade. So for me, I also felt like landed house usually has this very typical, predictable outlook, where from the windows itself, the placement of the windows and how it's being designed, typically you can tell how many stories is this house. And so I wanted to play with the planter box to stagger them in different heights so that from outside you can't really tell, is this a 3-story building or is this a 4-story building, or maybe it's only a 2-story building. I find that to be quite an interesting exercise for the office. And through the staggering of these plants, I realized that I'm actually able to appreciate the plants at different angles. When I look at a plant like this, I can't really see what's under the leaf, right? But when I elevate it, I actually can see. And you'd be surprised that actually the underside of leaves is quite interesting. So these are some examples. Like under the fern, you see like these kind of like, they look like sketches of bird nest fern, and under the other plant is actually a red leaf, and then the other one is actually a purple leaf. So we actually selected the plants ourselves. It's a personal hobby of mine. So I did this plant, and then we farm it out to a landscaper to coat for it. Yeah. All together, yeah. Okay, and we also put in a very simple irrigation system. You'll be surprised how simple is this. There will be flexible hose that runs through the planter in this diagrammatic form. And then I think in the morning and in the evening, it will trigger the timer to get the water going. So you don't really have to physically water it. I think like the maintenance of plants actually do scare certain owners, but I personally feel that it's not that bad a thing to propose these days, because these technologies are actually improving. Yeah, in fact, you can change the timer yourself. It's nothing much. And you can just buy it on your own if the timer spoils. And we kind of deliberately also spec for leaves that are a bit bigger and not so small, so the shedding of leaves can also be controlled in that manner. So after the facade was done, actually it didn't really change much. The context was still kind of same. We're actually still 9.5 meters away from crazy traffic. And this is what it looks like. But interior-wise, I think we did something here. Like, you kind of forget that actually you're staying by the road when you actually experience the rooms individually. And I'm also quite a contextual designer myself. And this part of the house, which faces the facade, was getting a lot of afternoon sun. And when this planter goes up, I find that the glare has been reduced and the lighting is much softer, and it actually makes this bedroom feel really restful and calming. This is the other bedroom. So because they stayed here before, and previously my client told me that, in fact, actually, it was not even in the brief that I had to do anything to the context. Because they stayed here, they know what the situation is like. It was never in the brief. We proposed this, and I think when we're designing it, they were like, "Oh, okay, this actually could be a solution." But before that, they were. I'm very sure. I was very certain that they were going to shut the curtains once they received the house. Yeah, but every now and then when we go back to the house to visit them, we see that they actually open it up, and it kind of invites very soft lighting into the house. Yeah. So because it's for family, it's actually for two brothers and their kids. We also kind of like design certain shared spaces. So you will see that the living room would have a sliding door partition that would actually be able to open up the space, so that during weekends when their family members come over to visit them, they can have bigger gatherings. And then right in the courtyard on the second floor is where we introduce more light into the space. And actually at the courtyard, it feels rather quiet. On the third level, because it's where we house the master bedroom and all, we find that it's more private. So we didn't really want to have a physical connection, but we still wanted to have a visual connection via the courtyard. And then on the last floor, which is the attic, we have it fully opened because this house was actually subjected to betterment charges. So we couldn't build it too big. Otherwise, the charges would be quite exorbitant for the client. Yeah. So this is where the partition will slide in and out to have a bigger gathering space. So you see, like, we designed this quite closely with the engineer. Because of how the portals are being tessellated, they cannot really be in concrete. And in fact, concrete would be too big. So the engineer says that, okay, let's try a steel structure, because steel would be able to cantilever longer. And the portal frames that we wanted, where there wasn't a continuous vertical or horizontal beam, it was okay. And so before the plans went up, this was what the house looked like. Yeah. And then this is the final outcome. So the plants kind of moved in first before the homeowners. Sometime like maybe 2 months before the owners moved in. In total, there are 12 trees on the facade, and on the ground floor there are about 30 trees, and 2 in the courtyard and 1 in the bathroom. There are total about 45 trees only in this 600 square meter plot. I think if we brought all the 45 trees down to the ground floor, we would be able to fill up the entire site, making it look like a forest. And then, to be honest, when I designed this, I wasn't sure how well it would do. And so every now and then I'll go back and then I kind of try to capture the progress of how the plants would grow. So you can see like day 2 is where they put in the plants. They look very bare. And then day 90, they start to grow. And you will see that the trees start to lean out to get more sunlight. And then day 146, they kind of, I think they feel kind of happy to be where they are, because they're growing really well. And then day 233, I think this is kind of like the full extent of what we envision it to be. And then the owners would also kind of like update me on the situation of the portals. Every time when there's a nest setting up and the birds laying eggs, he would take picture. During this time when we handed over was still COVID. And so the owners couldn't travel. They used to travel a lot for work, both brothers. But because they're at home, they have nothing to do. They decided to do gardening. Yeah, and I'm very happy that because of this house, they kind of changed their hobby. Yeah, and this is what the courtyard looks like. Actually, in this courtyard where it's open to sky, we are just trying to induce better ventilation for the house. Of course, drawing more natural light at the same time. But we also realized that in the middle of the house, via a courtyard, when we open the doors, actually we no longer can hear the traffic noise anymore. Yeah, and so on the left side they have 2 kids, and on the right side they have 3. The cousins will actually play around here, and it would be quite a safe zone for them. This is what the courtyard looks like at night. Yeah. So because of this planter and how we wrap around towards the side as well, at every corner you're kind of like invited to be connected with nature. So as you walk down the house, as you're showering, as you're picking up your clothes, this is a walk-in closet. And you can even go out for a short respite if you want. This is a study that is just at the side of the courtyard. And this is what the living room looks like. This is looking out towards the traffic area. So we changed the staircase position. I don't know if you've seen the plan. I don't believe that a staircase needs to just start from the same point and end at the same point on the top floor. Because I think that staircase distribution is actually very important in a house. Like example, in the first floor, we want a seamless connection between the dining and living space. It makes it nicer. So usually if we don't have enough width and we try to insert the staircase right in the middle of these two, then they kind of feel separated. So then on the upper floors, it actually makes better sense to have the staircase in the middle and distributing to the rooms. Yeah, and so this is how we designed this house to be in this way. This is the new context. So the green facade is actually a strong singular idea that's able to change the context of the site through nature and structural design. But it's also fulfilling our initial vision of wanting to contribute back to the neighborhood streetscape. So every time when a bus passes by, a car passes by, or like the neighbors, people will actually stop and look at this house. Yeah, I find that, and some of them would be quite amused, or some of them would smile also. I find that to be quite encouraging. Like, although it's just like a personal house, but it kind of has a bit of impact also in its neighborhood streetscape. This is the third project we're sharing tonight. It's called the Window Apartment. It's actually for a newly married couple that's hoping to set up their young family in the near future. This is a new unit where the main living area and the dining spaces are located in the middle of the apartment with bedrooms distributing on both sides. So this is what the corridor looks like. I find that, let me show you the plan. So this is what it looks like. I like the layout, but when I went to site, I realized that the rooms are kind of like functioning individually, although the living and dining space is kind of like collected in the middle. But I find that once you move into the corridors and you go into your bedroom, you are kind of like isolated and just being disconnected from the whole main area of the house. And so we decided that we would open up many holes in the apartment like this. I think the client was very scared when they came to site like this one day. Yeah. But I kind of like convinced them that we're on the right track. And then we neatened up all the openings, and then we decided to insert some of these windows. Actually, I find that one of my favorite architectural elements is windows. I find them to be very poetic. And there's many ways of doing windows, but because of maybe efficiency, nowadays we usually just see casement windows and sliding windows. But the old time windows are, to me, they are very whimsical, and they are just really a nice addition to have in the house. And so we took the opportunity to explore that. So this is exo of what it looks like. So we have vertical by bifold doors, which is very, very difficult to do. It was very challenging for the carpenter. We failed many attempts. And on the third attempt, we decided that we would integrate it with a bench so that the window is kind of like shorter, so that it's not so heavy. And then, so on the right, where you see a vertical sash window, it's where, it's actually where they would like to have the kids' room to be. And because we kind of like connected the two bedrooms, we're only left with 3 rooms, and the wife actually works from home. So the other room that's opposite the kids' room is actually a study room for the wife. And I envisioned it to, like, if they have 2 kids, then they most probably would have to have a double-decker bed. And if you have a double-decker bed, that means that actually at a higher level, this window will kind of like make sense. You can call out to your parents via the window from your bed. I think it's quite amusing for me. And at the back of my mind, I already know, because through looking at the north-south orientation of this unit, when we open the windows, actually we're inviting a lot more ventilation because of the direction of the windows that's created. Yeah, so the current windows, when it's being opened, actually they don't get much ventilation. So you need, if you want to induce more ventilation, you need to have both sides opened. So this is the eventual outcome. And this is the other window that opens. This is the vertical sash window that opens into the master bedroom. But we also understand that due to privacy issue, we cannot fully open it to look into the bedroom. So we actually have a wardrobe over there. So actually, when we were commissioned to take on this project, we have been studying and analyzing the common strategies that designers have explored to change modern apartment layouts, and we realized that there seems to be an increasing trend wanting to remove most of the non-structural walls within the apartment to create what we always call as open plan layout. I've always wondered, when I see a design like that, is this a sensible strategy? As I acknowledge that actually privacy was still a key element that people want within a setup of modern day living. And so we took on this project to see if we could find a sensible balance between privacy, connectivity, enclosure, and openness, seclusion, and integration. We realized that a lot of the rooms were connected to the communal areas, and because of that, the 3 rooms will have the option of having some form of connectivity into the main space. And in that sense, no space is completely shut off. And the family members can actually choose how they want to use these windows according to their moods. Wanting to be alone with others, the idea of privacy turns elastic. Okay, and this is one of our latest project that we just featured. It's called House of Parts. It's a renovation project for a 3-story corner terrace house. It's a very modest size interior footprint, and then the client wanted, of course, to prioritize the usage of natural materials, and also to cater for a big dining area to host gatherings. So this was how the house looks like. Just just a very typical interior that you see in these days houses would have. I think the previous owner went through 2 rounds of renovations or A&E, and that's why the house is living like a patchwork. There's lots of tiers of ceiling that you see going up and down, and so it was a very challenging project, to be honest, for me. This is on the 2nd floor. This is the master bedroom, and then on the left is actually the study room. So the strategy for the idea for this house was that I wanted to emphasize on individual elements. I wanted to emphasize on individual elements in the house, making them look like pieces of sculptural artwork. Examples: the steps, study table lamp, and windows. Because I feel like for small houses, I think instead of adding more elements into the house, we think it's really to redesign existing elements to give them more character within the space, then we find it to be more meaningful. So that house actually reminded me of my parents' home when I was staying there when I was a month old till I was about 4, and then we moved to where we're staying currently. It's an intermediate terrace house. We also had split level, and we had this crinkled brown tiles at home. So every time when I think about my memories of my first house, I always think of this floor. And the grout lines, as you can see, is very pronounced, and then it's in herringbone. I find that nowadays we keep giving emphasis on wanting to use large format tiles, lots of large format things, not just tiles, just everything. And I find that we are just erasing all these beautiful lines away. I mean, why do we do that? So this is actually a large format tile. And then we realized that because it's large format, we can do a lot more with it. So we tessellated it into a floor, looking quite organic, and it has a kind of rhythm and flow. This is what the bedroom looks like. The window on the right, we did it as a carpentry instead of doing it as Venetian or blinds like how we normally would. Because this is a renovation project, we can't really touch the external elements much. But I find that this window was kind of like detracting the attention to a nice view towards the left. So we decided to use carpentry to kind of fit in a kind of like a window door system to it. And then I think I have this renewed affinity with simple materials. I find that it's not about using new materials all the time. I think like the office philosophy is never about hunting for new advanced materials. Actually, the office has always been to relook at old materials. This is actually a $10 zinc sheet that is like 4 feet by 8 feet, and I think it retails for $10. I like the quality of it because, okay, so this is actually the study room. We designed it to have like a little small peach structure. Because zinc itself, this material, is a way of associating with Southeast Asian houses. Yeah, in fact, nowadays, when I look at this material, people use it for workers' quarters, which I feel is quite sad. And then we put in a big rock in the bathroom as well. And we brought in plants also within the setup of this home to just soften things. And to create more sculptural pieces in the house for vertical circulation, we decided to have a travertine step in a layering composition. Okay, because of the modest floor plate, I find it challenging to put an island. I find also that these days clients are obsessed with always having an island in a dry kitchen setup. But it's never really something that I'm very attracted to. So I told the client, okay, I'll give you a big dining table because you wanted a gathering, but let's have a smaller but better designed dry kitchen for you to host. Actually, before, I think you would have seen the image before, olden time basins, they're actually round before any sanitary pipes or system is being introduced, you would have seen, right, olden times there would be a pedestal and the sink would be round. It would just be propped onto the pedestal. Yeah, and I always felt that actually round sinks are very beautiful. And to follow the whole curvature of this round sink, we decided to do a setup like this. I think it's actually more suitable for this house and definitely nicer than an island. And here is also something that my family likes to do at home. During Chinese New Year, my dad would actually bring a tree into the house, yeah, for like decoration. And so I thought to the owner, I said, okay, how about we invite nature in to be part of this composition where you can have dinner with. And so we, people always introduce their firm as multidisciplinary, but for us, actually, we just keep wanting to take over all these elements in the house. Yeah, but we didn't start out wanting to make furnitures. And this is what the house looks like. It's still very small and modest. You can tell from the scale of things. We designed also the bench right in front of the staircase, the dining table, and then the other split level. And as you saw the first picture of the interior, you see there's so many differing heights of the ceiling that was going crazy for me. And so we kind of smoothen it out with very nice smooth curves. And you will see that there will be this flow of, through the finishes, there will be this flow from one level to another higher level. And this is a window that we designed looking into the car porch so you can see who's coming home. I think materials and light actually comes hand in hand. You cannot fully understand the power of light without materials. And even light at different intensities would actually project a different persona onto materials, how intense the light is, and at what time does the light come in. So it's almost like they work hand in hand. You cannot understand light without materials, and you cannot understand how beautiful a material is without light. Okay, I'm down to my final project, which is a brick and mortar shop. So the client approached us in year 2018 to revamp their current multi-label kitchen appliance showroom. That was actually done back in 1998. Over the last 23 years, there were many multiple ad hoc refurbishments that left the space looking like a disorganized patchwork. This is what the showroom looks like before renovation. The showroom is actually located in the western part of Singapore at the Pioneer Industrial Estate. And this is what the showroom looks like from outside, because it houses offices also, and the showroom is right at the ground floor. Yeah, so actually you do get a full frontage when you arrive at this location of the showroom. The total renovation area is 7,330 square feet. There are 5 brands that we need to curate for them, and they have also requested for live kitchens for them to be able to do demonstrations to their customers for events. So this is the area of the renovation. This is our first time actually doing a commercial job. As you can see, our experiences has always been residential and more residential. Back when I was in MKPL, I was also doing residential, but of course, bigger ones like condominiums and strata landed houses. I honestly have zero experience in doing commercial work, and so we had to do some field study. And then, sadly, we found that most kitchen appliance stores do not pride themselves as having much of a shopping experience, as they typically take on a very ubiquitous presence, like this. I think y'all know which store it is. So, inspired by the term brick and mortar, which means a physical presence of business, we designed the shop using cement bricks. I've always felt that there is more than what we see in ordinary materials, like a cement brick that only costs 50 cents. In fact, a red brick would actually set you back by another 20 cents, which costs 70 cents. And coupled with my fascination with the cross-section of nature, like fruits and vegetables, I was actually very curious to find out what a cement brick would look like. And so we sliced open an ordinary brick to reveal its very intricate fluted core. Using what we tessellate it into. So this is how we cut it. Of course, not by scissors, but it's actually a bench saw and a rotating knife. So we honestly had a lot of obstacles doing that. You would think that, oh, the exercise of cutting a brick sounds easy, but honestly, it's not. So the height of the brick is 200. And so for the blade to get across, you actually need a very big blade because you can only effectively use slightly more than 1/3 of the blade as it rotates. And so they had to flip this brick twice to cut it on both ends, and then it would open up like what you see in the diagram. And then we use it to tessellate freestanding walls, reception, and bench. So, and this is the outcome of the showroom. So aside from the walls, we were also trying to find a low-cost material for the floor. For many years in Singapore, the building industry has generated a lot of waste. From unreasonable requests and expectations from clients, the supply of natural stone is not spared from these requests. For high-end residential projects, stone suppliers are expected to lay out all the pieces in their factory premise for pre-selection exercise as what we call a dry lay. Before they are able to transport them to site, the supplier reveals to me that this amounts to about 20% of it being rejected due to their natural blemishes, differences in tonalities, and of course handling of materials during these dry lay sessions. The other waste that's generated is from slab selection, as you can see from the picture, where there are times we pick a particular portion of where we want to use, example, in the middle, and we'll create high off-cut wastages. And these two exercises generate so much waste as there is insufficient holding space for these rejected stones. They usually would be sent to the wasteland at a cost. So, yeah, in Singapore, the context of Singapore is that you cannot throw anything for free. So suppliers would then have to dispose these off-cuts by paying a sum of money. And they actually do this on a weekly basis. So for this project, I told the supplier that can they keep about 40 crates full of off-cuts and broken marble for us to be used in the shop. So this is how we lay it. It looks like a shoreline actually, this picture. Yeah. And this is the outcome. I find that this whole situation works really well. Supplier, client, and architect. So the supplier obviously would love to sell their waste to a client. I mean, they used to be charged for disposing it, so now perhaps they can get some money back. The client is also quite happy because maybe he can get a natural marble floor at a much lower price, right? And from a designer or architect's point of view, I honestly don't think that I compromise in any aspect of what I wanted to do in this showroom. And so I feel like the situation works really well. And so this is the reception counter. So next, I also had to find a suitable material for carpentry. Because we find that the unadorned plywood is a sensible choice of material simply because they will never be discontinued, unlike artificial laminates and veneers. Because I think as designers, we cannot be designing a space and then leave it to the owners to manage it themselves. Maybe certain things, it actually cannot be managed. You know what I mean, right? So then maybe perhaps 5 years later, when I come back to the shop, it looks kind of like a patchwork again. And a lot of people feel like we are using plywood because of aesthetic reasons. Actually, it's for functional reasons that we use plywood. Because you will never run out of plywood. Plywood will always be there. In fact, plywood is the backing for your veneers and laminates. And so, and because of the nature of their business, we try to give some flexibility of changing out these carcasses and all, but beyond our control. I think that down the line, they would have to make certain adjustments, and that's when they can find this material back again. So the showroom actually, with all these three materials, you can see that we actually didn't use any glossy materials. They are all in matte finish. So this is what we actually did for the client, is that instead of having to drill the hoods to the carpentry, which I think after like 3 to 4 times you change out, usually the screws will not adhere anymore. So we had to design a small L bracket so that it makes changing, and a lift up panel. So actually for them to change the hood, it is actually a very much easier job than what was happening before. I find that some of the showrooms that I visited, I find that there's a big clutter, and usually most of the products are actually old models that people display, or they could just simply can't find anywhere else to display it. So we actually created drawers to have older models being housed in these drawers, and newer models would then be above. This is to kind of like contain the mess and to continue to make the showroom feel like it's more inviting and less clutter. And we also thought of a solution of the sink, because the sink sizes would change quite a lot. So we find that, okay, we'll create a cutout, and with each cutout, you can remove the panels if you have a bigger sink. You can put back the panels if you want. So this is the area where we did the renovation. This is actually the glazing, and we actually designed the walls to take on this axis so that it draws in a lot more daylight for the showroom. So the showroom actually can operate with just 50% artificial light, and then they can rely 50% on natural light. Which honestly, I prefer to have natural light coming into this space, because I find that the materials actually works better with natural light. And because of all the matte finishes that we use, you can see like the faucets are shining quite proudly against the plywood. I think sometimes designers get a little too preoccupied with what we want to do and certain agendas that we want to fulfill. But we mustn't forget that at the end of the day, we're actually helping the client to display their products and show their products. We should also be very respectful in understanding that their products will have to stand out. Again, because when we study the appliances, they are mainly made of very shiny materials like metallics, glass, and we are very confident that at the end of the day, when everything goes up, the products would still stand out on its own. Okay, and then again, we salvage more marble. This is actually a sink cutout. I think the supplier was supplying to a hotel, and they had a lot of these sink cutouts. And so we also took them, and we said that we want to turn it into a coffee table. And it looks like this, right there. I think that if I didn't tell you that these are materials that we salvage, you might actually think that they are real materials. And that goes to show that the amount of waste that we throw away, actually, they're still very precious. That's what the showroom looks like. This is the overall view of the showroom. I find that through this project, I kind of have a new understanding of buildings, architecture, to say that actually our interiors or our buildings, they actually have their own persona. I don't know how you feel about this, but through this project, I realized is that at different lighting conditions. So last year we threw a party and it was raining quite heavily outside. And then the condensation on the glass panels make the interior feel really nice and toasty inside. And then another gathering, you can see that it's actually the same space, but it's taking on a new persona again. A quiet corner at the back of the showroom. And a fully brightly lit sunny day, and this is what the showroom looks like. And this is the best state that I like. When no one is in the showroom and all the artificial light is turned off, it's just atmospheric. Right. So last year, we actually tie in with Aki Fest to do Aki Tour. So we had about 40 people dropping by into the showroom. And then after that, I was tagged in a post on Instagram. And I would love to meet this person, to be honest. I don't know who was it, within the 40%. And she wrote this post after visiting it. Personally, it reminded me of my granny's home. I almost wish I could take off my shoes to truly appreciate the art on the floor and the value of the space. Thanks again for the unforgettable tour experience. I find that to have that association with your granny's home, it kind of sounds far-fetched, but yet it feels very close. I don't know how to describe this feeling. Maybe it cannot be articulated. It needs to be experienced. Yeah. So I'll end my talk with a video.
Thank you so much. I need a break before talking. It's I thank you.
Are you feeling emotional?
Oh, it's amazing. Like there is something very very special this year. It's the third time we are doing the TAP series, the third year, and this year is just full of emotion. It's amazing. And to see each architect coming here since the beginning of the year, opening their hearts and to share with everyone the way that you've been doing it, from one talk to another. Melvin is here, Yang Keng was here earlier, if you're still here. So it's just amazing to see that it is a rare moment where you can get close to the architect and for them to share what they truly believe in. And yes, I know your work. Yes, we've been preparing this talk, but the way that you are presenting them is a whole new world for me. So you're a magician. You are a true magician. So you are beyond an architect. I was trying to find the term, like storyteller. Are you a storyteller? You are beyond that. You are really a magician in crafting experiences. And yes, we talked about it. We said, like people say, you do a lot of materials, and but actually it's beyond texture, it's beyond tactile, and you said like even something earlier, which is creating feelings, and that are really recalling from the memories and how we perceive elements. And that's why it makes me so emotional, because we tend to forget what architecture can create as emotion, because we always believe that we should do the tallest or the fastest or the biggest, but your architecture is slowing down, and to really pay attention to our built environment and how it impacts the way that we are. And when you were talking about the House of Trees, they were, which I'm not being too emotional, I need to ask my questions. But there were two terms that came to me. One that was the House of Life, because the way that you are describing what you are doing, you were just talking about life. And the other one is the House of Time. Of time, before House of Trees is the House of Time. The way that, the other House of Plants, but it is, for me, it's the House of Time, because you are crafting the time. You are defining the moment. You are defining the life of this house, the way that the trees will grow, the way that people will interact with them. And that's why I'm saying that it's beyond like what you can provide, because it's the life that is taking place, and it is the time that is crafting it for the people. So thank you once again for all of what you have shared with us. Okay, so I took notes, like so many notes. Yes, I did have many questions in my mind before, and that I still have in my pocket, and that I will look at. But there is something that you kept repeating. It's about elements, the elements of architecture. And at first, I wanted to ask you the question about the tactile experience that you are creating. Is it your signature? But actually, I will reframe my question, which is about the fundamental elements of architecture, because we've been talking a lot about them, whether it's a window, a staircase, or even a brick, some elements that are fundamental to architecture. So is it your methodology in like crafting spaces and experiences?
I think in our office, or at least for me, when I take on a project, the incipient part, I think I work like an artist, which means at the start. Hello. I think the start of the project, I tend to work like an artist. I think that's the reason why. In fact, to do a project for me, the starting point is always quite emotional. I don't really share it very openly, but I kind of want to dig further into the context of the place. In fact, I would share with you, I would prep myself before that, before I enter a site. I would kind of like emotionally prep myself to discard all that I've learned and enter the site to see things. Usually, I want to from a fresh perspective, to feel also the spirit of the place. To me, that is fundamental, and it's always a good place, a good starting place if you get it right. So I often feel that the starting point is actually the most important part of the project. And you talk about me speaking about elements and all that. I'll be really honest with you. I'm just being myself. I mean, I share with you how I get inspired as a kid, as a 4-year-old kid, when I recall about my own home. I don't know how to explain this to you, but every time when I recall about my own home, my old home, it's almost like I'm hugging a very memorable piece of experience that kind of forms that core of me. Yeah. And so throughout these years, my best advice is to really be yourself. And that really is what the world needs. The world doesn't need another second me or a second you. The world needs very unique individuals. Yeah.
Hello. Yes, it works. Thanks a lot for sharing that. And is it what pushed you to go out of the corporate world, to leave your former office? That is quite a famous office in Singapore. Is it something where it was like almost like a calling? Like I want to be myself. And to be myself, I need to be out of the corporate world to run my own business and to decide for what I want.
I wish I could say that, but it's not. I worked in MKPL for 5 years. To be honest, I'm a risk-averse person, and opening my own office is just no. Like, so much things to handle. You got to be your own accountant. You got to throw out the rubbish yourself, and mop the floor yourself. I don't want to do all that. But I come again from my family. My dad's side of the family, they are very entrepreneurial. And for the longest time, they've been telling me to come on my own and to try, and they would support me. People say that they are self-made. People often say that they are self-made. I never call myself that. I think I'm family-made and I'm God-made. Yeah. And so they convinced me, and I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. In fact, if you look at my timeline, there was actually a 2 years gap. 2014, I got my licensure. And within that 2 years, I was actually helping my family to do a project in Malaysia. And I took that 2 years to give it some serious thoughts, whether I really want to do this, for real. And then all of a sudden, I think it was a situation also that somebody approached us to do an A&A house, and that was actually the time I registered my firm to BOA, and the rest is history.
And so, did you, or do you feel right now to be at the right place? So after experiencing all of these things, working in a corporate environment, opening your firm, developing some projects, so do you feel that you are at the right time, the right location where you want to be?
Being your own business owner and entrepreneur, right? I can tell you today I feel like this, tomorrow I feel something else, and then the next day I feel something else again. Someone is laughing. Someone is laughing here because that someone clearly understands. So why I say that, of course, when we do well, we're like, oh yeah, this is the best decision I made myself. And then when something happened, they were like, why did I open my own firm? Previously, when I was in MKPL, when I had a big crisis or something happening on site, I'd be like, talk to my boss.
Yes.
And there would always be somebody
Yeah,
to take
yeah.
care of it. And I'd be like, I'm going away for 2 weeks for a vacation. You know, like now I can't really
No.
go away, you know? And so but all in all, the big trade-off is I have creative freedom. Yeah. So I think I actually feel quite blessed to be in where I am.
That's great. Before I continue with some other questions, do you have any questions for Shing? Any burning questions? Okay, so maybe I will ask like 2 more questions after we can go and drink. No, like in your career, being and maybe I will use this one. Sorry. Being a female architect, did you face any difficulties at some point or not? I'm saying this because we believe, like some people believe that architecture is a men's world where it's meant for taking decisions, but actually no. And that's why I'm asking you these questions. Did you at some point face any difficulties because people were taking us like, well, you're women, what are you doing here, or never? So how do you have any experience like that you can share?
So I grew up with boys. I have 2 older brothers, and I feel that has kind of rubbed off onto me. I always tell my dad that he has 3 sons. I've always been, I don't know, I don't think I have the typical characteristics of a female. Like I feel I usually am very task oriented. I am quite decisive in the way I do things also. So but it could be my blind spot, as in I don't know what my clients think of me as a female architect, but for me, I honestly just want to be a good architect that happens to be a female. Yeah. As in, I don't really think that there's any gender advantages in here.
I will ask a very last question for you. What is your best memory in any of your project? A moment that you remember and that is that was an amazing moment. Be it finishing a project, welcoming friends into one of the projects that you did, getting all of these awards from SIA last year, or just being on holidays, being far from the office, or like, do you have like a really beautiful memory to share from your practice?
For me, I think the best satisfaction actually comes from, like I told you, my starting point, right? Usually I would tease out something that I want to address in the project. And when I successfully can do that, for me, I find I'm most satisfied. I tell you why. I don't think that designers need to gain their validation from clients, from anyone, to be honest, not even awards. I think you need to search for that meaning, how you want to contribute, because at the end of the day, if your clients doesn't pay you, your project doesn't win you an award, or say something went wrong, but deep down, if you knew like you were pushing for very meaningful stories in your project, and I think that's what matters. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this like closing answer. Before we clap our hand and we celebrate once again, just would like to invite you again next month. It will be like on the eve of ArchiFest, so the opening of ArchiFest from SIA, and the next TAP series will be the first event of ArchiFest 2023. So I would like to welcome you again here in the showroom of Cosentino. And so today I would like just to again give a round of applause to Shing.